So, good morning, welcome to this highly important topic that we're going to discuss about the state of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I mean, we just had elections yesterday in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and we had 13 parties coming into the equation. They were all being elected, and now they're going to fight to find out who will constitute a government. It's a chaos. It's very fragmented, like everything else in Europe. But we share a history, and we share values, which are the democratic values, and those we should really preserve and protect. We shall turn them into strength, especially in a time where we are so under pressure from countries outside, but also from within. And storytelling has always been the most important way to mirror us and to understand the world that we're in and connect us across countries, across societies and experiences. And in particular, our audiovisual storytelling is very powerful and has a tremendous way to communicate ourselves, our beliefs, across cultures, across generations, across societies, and create bridges of understanding and respect if we use them rightfully. But in today's context marked by war, political unrest, economical instability, and global uncertainty, certainly, the audiovisual fictional storytelling has or plays an even more critical role and responsibility in shaping tomorrow's Europe. And this is what we're going to discuss. Freedom of speech and artistic expression are essential to our democracies. They are certainly what we're here to talk about. But what happens when they are challenged in the name of democracy itself? What happens when we lose out on the arm's length principles between parties, governments, and these institutions which were established to secure and protect our democracies and our equal rights? What are we allowed to say as storytellers? And what do we dare to say? Are storytellers and screenwriters at risk of becoming mere entertainment, detached from the realities that we should reflect? These are the topics for today. And we have here a great panel. We call the panel Creation Under Pressure Towards Risk of Self-Censorship. But even better, we should call it The Right to Write, which is the name of the new report conducted by Federation of Screenwriters in Europe about the current state of freedom of speech and artistic expression. And before I introduce my panel, I would just like to come with a little disclaimer. To me, this topic is of utmost importance, really. It's like, it is so complex, very sensitive, so many political interests in it, and so many human beings in it. But that's why I just hope I can do justice to this panel. And I should also, of course, thank you for doing this report, because it's much bigger than just one panel. It's a really discussion that we need to broaden out to not only us in the cultural circuit, but also to all population of Europe. And maybe I should also thank David Kavanagh, former president of FSE, who was starting this out together with you, but I'll come back to that. Then I should introduce you, Carolin Otto. You are the German author and screenwriter, and you are a former president of FSE, writer on many series. That's Weiße Raben, amongst other, the documentary, and Aphrodite's Night. And then Teodora, Markova, Bulgarian writer and showrunner on, amongst other, Soviet Genes, which won here last year the award, the Audience Award in Series Mania 2024. You did Undercover, and you have done many other feature films as well. Then we have Helene Perquy, Belgian producer with her own company, Johnny Deponi, part of the Banijay Group, has produced series like Tabula Rasa, Blackout, Arcadia, and the awaited Boho, which we're going to see a clip from. And then, last but not least, Denis Goulette, French lawyer with expertise in intellectual property in the cultural sector and executive director of Federation of Screenwriters in Europe. And I would like to first give you the word to provide us with an insight to this new report.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So we are officially at the FSC publishing this new report today as we speak. So it is freely available on the FSC website. And for those who are interested, we also have printed copies available after the session. So this report starts from a simple observation. The challenges we usually associate with freedom of expression in journalism are also emerging in more diffuse way in audiovisual creation. And this is not an isolated concern. It comes from 31 guilds across Europe, across 27 countries, representing around 10,000 screenwriters. And it was unanimously supported. So as you know, Europeans have a very strong audiovisual ecosystem, largely supported by public service broadcasters. And it makes the conditions of creation particularly important for us. What we are seeing today is a growing pressure on culture and media. Pressure on public service broadcasters, funding systems, and on certain type of narratives. And what is striking is that these dynamics are not isolated. They follow a recurring pattern, often described as a playbook in many analyses around Europe and around the world. And what we wanted to understand at the FSC through this report is how this playbook translates into the field of audiovisual creation and what it means concretely for screenwriters. And at the core of this playbook, there is a fundamental, there is something fundamental, a growing challenge to what is considered true and to the institutions that usually help us agree on reality. And this has a direct concern for storytelling. Because the key issue is not direct censorship as we could think. It is something much more subtle. Some stories are encouraged, and we are seeing other stories quietly pushed aside. And this happens with very concrete mechanisms: commissioning decisions, funding approvals, editorial feedbacks. And what makes it difficult is that these mechanisms are rarely visible as such. They don't appear as a restriction, but they appear as normal decision. Selection is part of the job of screenwriters. So this matters because storytelling brings complexity. Complexity is not always comfortable. And it's also what allows us to explore reality and to question reality. So the issue is not only what stories are told, but how early they are shaped and sometimes limited in the process. And this is what we described in the report as a chilling effect in audiovisual creation. So maybe I'll leave it for now.
Thank you. We will certainly be back. Carolin, you were the one to, together with David, to start this report. What did get you going?
It all started in 2018 when we had the World Conference of Screenwriters in Berlin. And we had the overarching topic of freedom of expression. We saw the first time, like among our members, like in Poland, and at that time in Austria as well, we had a panel on how public broadcasting is influenced by right-wing parties, because still public broadcasters are the most, they fund most of the audiovisual creation in Europe. It's not the streamers, it's our public broadcasters who do this. So we have to be aware of that this is a real threat to our jobs, to the whole industry, and freedom of expression is one angle to look at it, but it's the same meaning. And at this time, I was aware that something is growing, and I felt a little bit too sensitive maybe about this, but then David and I had a first survey by some external researcher, and when it came back to us, we saw that these external researchers would not be able to go into all of the details and the very practical and concrete things that were happening. And this is why we, among all our members, we had questionnaires, we set it up again, and David did most of this research and putting together all of it work. And the playbook is one of the central
But let me just ask you, because we mentioned two playbooks here, because when I read it, there's also a kind of a look into something that reminds me about Trump's little playbook,
but
the Project 2025.
That's where it's nailed down for the first time. But then you can see that quite all of the right-wing parties adapted, and we try to check it out for audiovisual writing, because in every sector it turns out a little bit different, but this is the way we wanted to look at it for our industry.
And I can say also from Denmark now that we certainly have right-wing, extremist right-wing parties that are in favor of cutting down totally on our public service. We see that all around, so this is certainly the state of the affair right now. So, coming from Bulgaria, Teodora. I mean, you have a history with a democratic country, but also wounded somehow. So I asked all of you, Carolin, Helene, and you, Teodora, to come with a clip or an item that somehow could be a talking point from and also reflecting what we're talking about. So you have a clip to show, and then I think you should introduce it, and then we should see it, and we should talk about the situation in Bulgaria.
It is a short clip from the pilot episode of Soviet Jeans. Just to mention, this is a Latvian show, and because at that time the opportunities for me in Bulgaria have already been very reduced to write something in Bulgaria. Probably we'll come later to that. But it is an example of how censorship worked back then in 1979 in the Soviet Union. So this is a young director, theatrical director from Helsinki, and she has come to stage Hamlet in the Soviet Riga National Theatre. And Shakespeare, just to make a short explanation, was the biggest threat to the Communist Party at the time. And because all the artists used Shakespeare to convey secret messages, subversive messages.
I mean, when we spoke before, you just mentioned that the national broadcaster in Bulgaria, how is the situation? Doesn't exist or exists?
Okay, just if you allow me a short introduction to know the context. I come from a country where one person, the oligarch Delian Peevski, decides that Bulgaria should join Trump's Council of Peace and pay $1 billion US per year because he wants to be removed from the Magnitsky Act list for corruption. So if one person can control what happens, the fate for the country, what to say about the public broadcaster. For the past 4 years, we had an illegal managing director, meaning that his term has ended in 22. And there were various procedures to stop the process of electing a new director. So our public television is repeatedly criticized by various international and national organizations for lack of impartiality, for distorting news topics, for giving preference to some narratives, precisely the Kremlin narrative. And among the guild, everybody knows and everybody speaks that there is no transparency in distributing the funding for film and TV series. Everybody talks about bribes and corruptions, but nobody dares to speak out loud because if you don't have evidence, of course, you can be sued for this. So it's not only the public broadcaster. The situation with the private broadcasters is pretty much the same.
So, but you then had to go to Latvia to produce this show, is that correct?
There are a lot of journalists and authors that are blacklisted from the public broadcaster. And I think that at the moment it's more shameful not to be blacklisted.
Yeah.
You start doubting yourself, why are these people there? How?
Yeah. So, Helene, now we move to mid-Europe, to the epicenter of Europe, to Belgium. And you also have a clip from your latest show, Boho, which was screened, the trailer was screened yesterday, I think. So tell us a little bit about that clip, and then we see the clip, and then we go into if you can see similar things happening in the future in our country, in our so-called democratic countries.
Yes, it feels strange to talk after Teodora, because of course, I mean, it's horrible what you tell. And I think all public broadcasters and every broadcaster should be here. Because the clip that I will show is of course one that is made in all freedom and that was commissioned, but still it is important in Belgium as it is on representation. And so we show a lot of color. But in the clip especially, we do not focus on the polarization. We just show people or women of color being just like we are, with small, maybe, differences. But the nuance in whatever we are all saying, that's the danger. The danger is the nuance. It's not the political playbook, we know it. So it will come across as very light and it is also very light, but it is still a bold choice to make a show like this, which says a lot.
Let's show video number 2.
Ik betaal, hè?
Ah nee, ik trakteer je toch altijd?
Voilà. Zeg, hoe is het mee?
Alhamdulillah, met u?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Mijn mama, Alwalid?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Zeg, en Leila, hoe is het maar? Die gaat trouwen, hoor ik.
Ja, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Ja, met Mehdi gaat het ook heel goed.
Alhamdulillah, wa shukru lillah.
Ja, alhamdulillah voor iedereen. Ons eten wordt koud.
Alhamdulillah.
Mehdi in therapie.
Ja, wie had dat gedacht?
Die wil niet zoals zijn papa worden. Hij heeft schrik dat hem dat gaat meegeven in de opvoeding van ons kind. Ik vind dat schoon.
Misschien moet je dat ook proberen.
Wat?
Therapie?
Waarom?
Om niet zoals mama te worden?
Waarom zou ik zoals ons mama worden?
Ik heb niks gezegd. Niet boos worden.
Ik ben niet boos.
Vind jij eigenlijk dat ons mama gelijk heeft?
Wat?
Ja, ik had die job en nu heb ik niks.
Maar nee.
Jawel, hè. Ze heeft wel gelijk. Ik heb nog maar €235 op mijn bankrekening. Ik heb geen job, geen lief, niks. Wailo. Ik ben 34, hè. Jij vindt dat idee van dat dansen ook dom, hè? Ik vind echt niet dat hij gelijk krijgt.
So, Helen, I suppose what we are talking about here is representation. Do you see in the near future that we do not dare to make shows like this in Europe? I mean, in your country, in Belgium, because of self-censorship, because of artistic suppression, somehow, that these shows will not be done?
Well, you said it yourself. It's in the data. We should always refer to the data and the knowledge that we have. And you say explicitly it depends on who commissions and what is commissioned. So this is the first time that those writers, because Abi Butkabut had this story and it's about female connection. So yes, I believe that we should all be very, very, very aware of the stories that are picked and that we want to tell. And that's exactly why I have been a profound believer in strong producer from the beginning, because we should protect the writing process. We should protect the IP and ID and identity of the show from the start. And the VRT, or the public broadcaster in Belgium, I've made a dystopian series with them. I've shown Thriller on Sunday night for a broad audience, because I always said, and we teamed up on the fact that you should stretch the audience. You shouldn't give them what you think they want. You should stretch them. And so I think that is profoundly what our ecosystem should do, because you cannot deny what he's saying. Of course, we will all feel it.
But then to all of you, what happens when we just see that they are under so much pressure that at some point they will simply be cut to zero, the national broadcasters? So we share a common value with them somehow, but also they are the ones that they are also in danger.
Which makes it absolute making sense for them to team up with us.
Yeah.
So it's really ridiculous, because everybody needs strong public broadcasters. So we should just find ways to, and fiction is like the new literature, so we should tell good stories so the audience watches, and when the audience watches and you have a broad audience, that empowers the broadcaster.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think it's a joint venture we have to get them in on. And we'll get back to something later on about relevance, but you want to say something, Carolin?
Yes, I wanted to say something about the very beginning of a story, because this is where you already start to decide if you want to go on, because it's the writer who has to go as the first one who's putting in energy and time. So we are the ones who have at least to write down something that can be shown. And at that point, you already will think about what might work and what not. This is why it's called self-censorship, because we can see that people today think about, would this work in 3 years? Can this work in 3 years? Because in 3 years, you're going to see maybe what's written today. And this is what we can already see. And this is more subtle, apart from the very normal imbalance of power towards writers. You still have this in the beginning, because you will not prepare something that's not going to be developed later.
Unless you team up with producers or you understand and believe the idea, because do you really think a dystopian series was something that I thought I would manage to produce, or did I say it is really worth a try, and then in the end I manage? But self-censorship is something we should warn you guys about, because I understand that you think about the audience. You should.
Yeah, well, I just think about the money I'm earning, because it's a profession, and if I don't go to live on what I'm writing, then I really have to think about it before. Well, I have my personal consequences on this, because
we too. Yeah.
And no producer will line up with me for something. He says, "Wow, this is great, this is good, but it's very difficult to go along." I might ask one person, and if this one person doesn't want it, but in order to show it, there has already I have to put my time and my knowledge into it, and nobody will pay me for this. I can see this. I'm working with people, I'm working for a long time now, and they asked me to write again and before even presenting it. They paid me once, and then I have to present three themes for the same show that I invented. And so it's very...
So you kind of quit now, more or less?
No, I can't, but I took my personal... Yeah, because
we will get back to that later. Yeah. But Teodora, because the point about joining up with a producer and joining up, of course, with your broadcaster, aligning the vision from very early on about what you're going to do, what kind of show you're going to do, I think is key, is not?
Yeah, I think the idea, what I prefer is saying to my writers, go ahead. Go ahead. Be creative first. Do not, to really get into the heart of your story, I think you should have creativity first. I understand what we are talking about in the sense of earning money. I am living in this world. I know how hard it is. But still, I think an independent producer can really say to writers, don't think too much now about productional burdens or indeed editorial notes. We will see. Just first feel what you want to write and write. I mean, you first have an idea, of course, and then develop it at the stage. And then I think it's very important that a producer, especially those days, protects the idea together, yeah.
But I think there's differences in Europe, I should say that, because coming from European Writers Club, I can see producers are not looked upon the same way in many southern countries than they are in our mid-European countries. Teodora?
I just wanted to mention that what I see is that the self-censorship is on every level, and it starts from the program director, who somehow is scared, even though they might be not told to do something or not, then the editing commissioner, then the producer, then the writer. And if the writer decides just to please what they want to do, when a writer decides to please the audience, as a general, I think this is the very shortcut to mediocrity. And what I can share from my experience, good or bad experience, the good or the bad? The good.
You take the good one, yeah.
Okay, so what happens right now in Bulgaria is that the public opinion is so quickly manipulated by trolls, and Bulgarian trolls are very cheap. They can be, you can put like very little money, and in 3 days you can create wonders. For example, John Malkovich came to Sofia to stage a play, and in 3 days they organized a huge protest in front of the National Theatre, and they even physically attacked one of the actors, and the premiere was cancelled. Something similar happened to a TV series that I made, a historical TV series, in which I chose not to mythologize in this patriotic way the past, Bulgarian past. And it was severely attacked in the social networks, and my producer, with the help of a company, identified more than 400 fake profiles registered the week before the premiere, which were distributing, almost copy-pasting the same messages.
Yeah. So coming back to talking about trolls, talking about truth, and Steve Bannon, Nigel Farage, is this somehow part of a bigger plan to divide Europe and really, because we are very vulnerable in Europe? How do you see that, Denis?
What we are seeing in the playbook is that the main point is to make growing difficulty to agree on what is true. And what are the facts. And this is why we are talking about this fragmentation, and because there is a distinction between the narratives. Because a storyteller is someone who is bringing complexity by its own vision, which is singular, into the world. And complexity is not a good way if you want to surf on anger to get vote. So you have to simplify the narrative because they are much more powerful and they are easy to share, easy to feel, easy to understand for people. And so that's why storytelling is becoming a sensitive issue in Europe, because we are in a fight for shaping reality and avoiding people to agree on a common reality. And storytellers are people who are coming from the reality, creating emotion about it, giving their own vision, and this is dangerous. Diversity is dangerous if you want a very simplified narrative, which combined with this idea of destroying the very concept of truth and facts, makes it very easy after that to reshape the world you want to create. And this is the playbook, and this is why it's sensitive for storytellers.
So then let's talk a little about the tech giants, because we also see that somehow they serve also a purpose, quite interestingly, and also in the fragmentation, and with all the alternative facts and hate bait and whatever we see on those medias, on those platforms. That is the new reality. How can we ever change that, and how can we avoid, how can we create a digital sovereignty of Europe?
It's up to me.
Legislation?
Legislation. What do we do? Or do you see it? Because, I mean, we just had it the other day that even Trump now can say everything. He has done that all the time, so he was the one who actually started it all somehow, or the people behind Steve Bannon and so on. But when he said the other day that when Robin Mueller, the former president of head of FBI, just died out of illness, he said that was a great moment. How can one say that? So this is what we are facing right now.
I know, but I think if there would be a very easy solution, we would have found it. I think the only thing that we can do is be very proud of who we are and keep on fighting to get the diverse stories out, because the only thing we have in Europe is we're Europe. And yes, we are threatened, and yes, we see the playbook, and yes, we've had wars before, and yes, maybe they will be coming, but the only thing we can actually do is keep on fighting to get the stories out. Because if you see, for instance, adolescence, which is maybe not a perfect example, but it did reach a lot of audience, and it was not an easy, it was an easy story, but it was told and it was shared, and it was, so the only thing you can do against somebody who's screaming out is to keep on having profound and well thought and versatile and diverse stories. It's like the same as the burning of the books. We should not let our fiction series, at least we should give it a fight and be aware.
Carolin?
Of course we have to do this. We face something that when you get your notes and your critique, it's not about the topic, not about the theme. They say, well, yeah, the way you put it is not exactly what we wanted. So it's all about the writing, and it's all about denying the qualities of your writing. It affects a writer very personal. So this is the way it's put. It's never said, we don't want something about gay people, or we don't want this, or we don't want that. So it's always on quality. The notes are not stupid. They will just say, it's not, well, maybe, we're not satisfied with the quality you deliver.
And that's the way they get around it. Teodora?
Yeah, I fully agree with Carolin, because this is, especially in the moment of development where writers feel most insecure And if you cannot distinguish whether it is for real an artistic weakness in your project or that they're trying to tell you something else, it could be appalling for a writer. But coming back for what can we do, for us, I think writers from Eastern Europe, for various reasons, the best model that we have for now is going into co-productions. First of all, because some of them are funded by our national film centers, and there is not such control in the film centers as might be in a broadcaster. My newest series, The Last Divorce of Communism, is presently a co-production between Bulgaria, Latvia and Lithuania. And we don't feel any pressure so far in telling this story. But for us, it's crucial to have this support from the European programs as media, TV content and Eurimage. Unfortunately, what is lacking for the moment is that they are not really accessible for us. Very often we receive high points in the artistic part, and afterwards it is said that we are 3 low-capacity markets, like Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania and Bulgaria, and it's been such a long run to apply and to gather the funding from the 3 countries, and then it is really discouraging because actually our funds and the money that we receive are so small that we cannot go to the international stage, even combining 3 countries together. So, and I believe that our parents were raised in communism, they lived the dictatorship, we know very well what propaganda is, and our stories are important, and it's proved, Soviet genes proved that it's traveled and is telling the Gen Z what is dictatorship, and it is important for them because now they vote, and they vote emotionally, and they are not aware of history.
But just coming back to, I mean, you said 3 minority countries. With your win with Soviet genes, has that enabled you to reach broader markets, bigger broadcasters around?
Soviet genes is distributed almost all over the world.
And that hasn't given you an opportunity to work with them directly?
Now, first, grateful to Beta Film that really made it happen. But it is still difficult for a Western European producer to be attached to an Eastern European series. Still difficult. For season 2 of Soviet genes, we'll probably have Germany. But as we see now for The Last Divorce of Communism, it's still considered that it is something that should be for the audiences in Eastern Europe. But if Eastern Europe is the weakest spot, this is exactly why we need to be supported, because now we'll see what happens with the elections in Hungary, but we have elections in 3 weeks.
In Bulgaria.
And we need to invest, Europe needs to invest in culture, especially in these weak countries.
Have we been, you want to say something, Denis?
Yeah, no, you were talking about what kind of solution, and I would like to focus on one thing coming from the screenwriters. What I'm seeing, there is something which is really interesting. This is the term gatekeeper. We have not been waiting for the growing of threats far right to have this word in our industry. It's a part of the job. Every screenwriter knows they are gatekeepers. And gatekeeping begins at the very beginning in the contract of the screenwriters. And what we are seeing in Europe is that we have still many screenwriters who see a significant part of their remuneration which is depend on highly discretionary decision, very subjective. It means that they are not all paid for the delivery of the work, for their craft, but whether or not their craft is accepted on purely subjective situation. And so it creates a system of structural dependence in which it is very difficult for the screenwriters to defend its own freedom of expression. We have that. We also have the problem of the implementation of the copyright directive, which has not been working very well in some countries, mainly in Eastern countries. So we also are in a political issue to say, if you want freedom expression to exist, you must give the writers a way to defend themselves. And today, the imbalance of power in contractual terms, this question of complete subjective remuneration based on criteria is something we should work. And on the gatekeeper means something which is quite vertical. And beside, we are talking about collaborative work. How is it possible to be in a collaborative work if we are still thinking about a step-by-step process of decision in which there is no horizontal discussion about the vision? For me, one of the solutions is to rethink this collaborative creation process.
So now I put a little screen up on there, and there's several values that we talked about, and I think it's important to kind of say these are the values that we all should somehow share. Talking about inclusion, have we been good in our society, in our cultural circuit, to include other political opinions? Have we been good enough? I mean, because I see what happened with the Democrats in America. They lost out on a huge part of their voters. Have we been good, or do you follow my question, Carolin? Could we be better in including? Could we be less confrontational?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
But that's life. I mean, we all can be better. I don't.
But we need to meet somewhere, because else this will not happen in the. Then we are fucked for real.
I
Teodora?
think that Europe is vulnerable because we have so many, it's vulnerable and rich at the same time, but we have so many different languages and cultures and ethnicities, and they use this to separate us.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a huge discussion. We are running out of time. We just had one last thing. You brought something with you, and this goes to this little part. Can freedom of speech also be good for business?
Yes, because this is the conclusion. You cannot sell any nationalist crap to anybody in the world. So we have to stick to the stories that make us strong, that make Europe, and that we just... Because if it's shaped as nationalist views want it to be shaped, nobody will be interested. Nobody's interested in seeing any Hungarian nationalist film funded by Viktor Orban's friends. So we have to say this very clear and loudly. And for myself as a screenwriter, to be to be able to handle and to be in power over my own creation, I finally did something that I always wanted to do, because it's we have to face that writing a script is always collaborative and you don't have all of the control. So what I did is I wrote a TV show. I got funding for it as a writer. I had problems with the contracts with my producer, and I decided not to do it. I wrote a novel, made an IP out of it. It appeared, it sold very well. It's now the paperback edition. It got optioned by another producer, and now let's see what happens, because I want to encourage screenwriters to take control of their work together with others. But in the beginning, I mean, just that's what we do.
Great. I mean, we are out of time. So I want to thank you, really. And I really appreciate this discussion that you started it. And it should certainly not end here, because it's way too important. And I also know that you have the report lying outside. Is that correct? Yes. Dennis? So the report is outside when you leave the room. So thank you for coming.